Let me invite the moderator of the next panel, which is about Proceed. Please welcome Iryna Manukovska, President of Innovation at XME.digital and the mentor for early stage startups. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Let me invite our panelists, and before that, a brief intro. And TechCrunch analysts predict that the task for startups to develop in the coming years will be even stronger and even more challenging, which will potentially shape your actions in the future. For Ukrainian startups, this had been the task with lots of unknowns for the coming past years, and we have a number of experts, some of them online, to spend 15 minutes to chart a road map for you about how to work on early stage, pre-seed stage, how to raise investments. I'm Iryna Manukovska. I will be moderating this panel, and let us get together with our panelists. Please welcome Evelina Holovanova, Ukrainian Startup Fund Coordinator, the true vehicle of our development for the past 5 years. Andrii Komlychenko, CEO and co-founder of Reblum, professional photo software for photographers, AI-based, by the way. Leonid Podobiedov, general partner at High Five Ventures. They are investing into Ukrainian founders wherever they are, and they've came into being already after the start of this full-scale invasion. Ivan Portnyi, CEO from UA, CEO of MacPo, the founder of partner of a startup of its own, and a CEO at Mission Possible. And we have with us online Viktoriia Tihipko, the founder and the managing partner of TA Ventures, the founder of iClub Angel Syndicate, and head of FutureTech, and her venture fund made an 80th exit recently. And last but not least, Adam Hashchyshyn, junior partner at Roosh Ventures Venture Fund. They are linking international venture fund with the Ukrainian projects with a focus on the EU and the USA. So, dear colleagues, let us see what the year 2025 holds for Ukrainian startups. What will change for the good or for the worse? Adam, over to you. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Adam, a member of Roosh Venture team. We're investing in early age startups in the United States and the EU, and we've already invested in 45 companies. I think 2025 will be a good year to start a company. I do expect investments to be roughly at the same level as previous year. No crazy evaluations or funding assessment like some years before. My personal expectations are that 2025 will see a reopening of the IPO window, and we will see a lot of exits like Deal, Discord. A number of companies are already ready for ground exits. Nice, thank you. Quite optimistic. Evelina, your forecast. As I represent the Ukrainian Startup Fund, those who don't know us too good, we work with early stage startups in Ukraine. We work on pre-seed and seed phases. And late this December, we will be 5 years old. We have issued almost 600 grants for $9 million. Our immediate plans are $1.2 million worth of grants for pre-seed startups without um, capital share in them. We want to focus on the infrastructure of the early startups in order to we want to actually create some public tools for them to evaluate their ideas, sandbox type, public blockchain based, and we work on the infrastructure for that already. One of our focuses is collaboration with universities and the launch of startup schools and studios. We are having a pilot with the Ministry for Education, and we want early startups to come into being at universities like they have it in the West. And we want a quality infrastructure to be established for this. Okay. Now, a little spoiler for you, Victoria. You mentioned a bit different path for startups. What is your vision of 2025 for your startup? What are your forecasts? Yeah, I won't forget about investments, but we've decided to wait a bit. We've started our operations already at the time of war, and we understood that there may or may not be conditions to call for external funding. Um, Unfortunately, 2025 is a synonym of uncertainty for us. So we're a bit cautious about that, but we are growing our project quite successfully with our own resource. If the situation goes better, we will definitely focus on raising money from potential investors. Otherwise, we'll be using the channels we are using now. Thank you. Quite an intriguing topic. I'd like to hear more about the channels that you might be using if no foreign investments come. Leonid, your forecast. Well, the cool thing is that we see the rekindling of interest among foreign investors. They've started actually looking at us a bit, not ready to invest just yet, but already considering how to go back to Ukrainian startups. And we see growing interest in dual-use defense technologies with quite a number of companies emerging with some cool potential also for external growth abroad. And we see growing support of the startup fund. And I think in 2025, there will be many more new investments, many new dealers, and probably some new M&As in defense sector will appear. Now, over to you. You have huge experience with startups. We had it before. Now you're building a startup of your own. What do you think? What do you make of 2025? As a CEO at Mission Possible, and where I am very close to investments into startups, I think the next year will be largely dependent on the situation on the front line, what developments will be in Ukraine in terms of, victory, negotiations, and so on, which may affect a lot investors' interests in Ukraine and towards Ukraine. Looking a bit from a higher vantage point, we may think that with the victory of Donald Trump, well, one might say that the markets have become a bit more optimistic, but in realistic terms, it may mean nothing for the startup market because being a founder of an early stage startup without knowing really what will come in the coming months, even more so in Ukraine, it's already a challenge, a cool but challenge. So the forecast is as follows. nothing will change for the founders of early stage startups because they still will have homework to do. And based on that, they will be either able to get some funding regardless of the situation next year or not. So, yeah, let us work with what we can govern. Victoria, your forecast for the coming year. Hi, everyone. Well, the previous years, this year included, were quite challenging ones for the startup ecosystem. We do expect some improvements in 2025, but as we live in the age of uncertainty, uh, anything may happen, be it some economic situations elsewhere on the US market, on Asian markets, and so on, to force majeure situations that we understand when and why they may emerge. Mm, Now, regarding the financial volume, they say that there has been a decrease from 2022 throughout 2024, but maybe some avenues will have to be revisited next year. We've seen an increasing number of startups connected to AI ideas. We have about 30% of them versus about 10-13% the previous year. So I think all the businesses and the startups that will be accelerated by AI will definitely be of interest for investors. And there's another important trend, which is about import replacements. Ideas of potential interest for Ukrainian startups, and there can be multiple companies worth dozens of billions of dollars on that. And if we look at Europe now, they have a strong focus on climate tech-related businesses, innovative technologies, innovative materials, biotechnologies, all those vertical configurations like biotech health, digital health, scientific and academia driven ones. We have quite a lot of talents in Ukraine for that to really bet on those innovative technologies and their prospects next year. Thank you indeed. Which brings us to the next question: where to look for opportunities at the time of black swans? We are not sure about tomorrow, what tomorrow will hold for us, and the world is in the same mood. Now, Victoria, maybe you could tell us the directions in which one might look. Yeah, my fund is focusing on early investments from pre-seed, late seed, seed, and so on. To 250 investments this year, 83 exits. The US, Europe, Ukraine, Southeast Asia, and MENA in the Near East, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. I think Ukraine should look onto the geography of it. So looking for just Americas or Europe may be a challenge if it is about vertical arrangements with specific dates in mind. If it is some health data or financial, fintech, health directions, it will be really challenging to extrapolate them from Europe, from America into Ukraine because of the level in which systems are regulated. Mina, when it comes to startups, you might find it easier because there are multiple benefits offered to teams in Saudi Arabia, in UAE. There are many teams willing to offer some adapted products on MENA or Southeast Asian markets, and some potential partners can be found there. So it may be possible to start or even restart your company to do a spin-off, because this Mediterranean and MENA region generally does pay a lot of attention to it. Again, not to forget the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, they can be helpful, and we have quite serious contacts via Endeavor, through IPO. We have quite a lot of interesting potential investments, also with Ministry for Regional Development. We looked intensively into Southeast Asian markets, Thailand, Indonesia, other such countries of the region with huge potential. So if the business model allows for that, so it can well happen.
Заскелити зараз на території України, можна запропонувати такий бридж на регіони Middle East і Southeast Asia. По багатьох вертикалях насправді. Тому на ці регіони я б звернула особливу увагу. Значить, в МІНа є гроші.
Yes, I would pay some attention to these regions. MENA has money. There are investors who are looking for strong, robust entrepreneurs, and there are ample opportunities to develop your business there. And we've got many friends within our ecosystem who are ready to facilitate. Right, so we'll take note of that. And if an idea just doesn't work in one of the markets, one of the areas, then you have to start looking for another one. Thank you very much indeed for this interesting presentation. So please follow the situation there and look for any potential new exits. Right. Leonid, the next question is for you, sir. I really like the quote on your website: money first, money, people first, money second, execution is a priority. So how important is the team at an early stage evaluation of a startup? Well, it's very simple. There are two types of indicators that we measure: quantitative and qualitative. And at early stage, what's important is the team and the people. Yeah, it also says on our website that we don't work with assholes. And this is the quote that I like the most, I think, because we've invested a lot of time and effort into our ability to actually make that statement and operate that way. And experience shows that this is the most important thing. As a founder, you have to be ready for a marathon, and you have to find it comfortable working with that founder, right? Because you could be working for dozens of years to get that. There is a company that we've been working for 10 plus years now, and we're doing just great. And then a lot of founders just don't understand why they need to raise funds. They don't understand how this market works. So this is crucial, to have a good understanding of how these things work. So we have this little tradition going where we would take founders to a pub somewhere and have an informal conversation, just like they do in Japan with sake and karaoke. Yeah, just without karaoke in our case. And anyway, this is important because, look, we look at quantitative indicators, right? But it makes more sense to look at the founders and how reasonable those people are. And look, none of these numbers actually work out as intended. Experience shows. So you have to look at personalities. You have to look at the founder, or even better, a team of founders ready to work, ready to pivot. One of our companies in our portfolio, they made their fourth pivot. And It looks like they've finally found a way to start going quickly, and it might turn into a pretty interesting story. But as somebody who has both success and failure stories, I know how hard it can get, just looking for money and starting doing things. So the team is the most important. So this Tinder effect, I like Star Wars, you like Star Wars, let's start working together. So how does that work for you? So what are you looking at? Both. We have to have a right view of different things, right? And we even try to digitize it using AI and other modern tools, but we're failing at it. So we try to come up with some sort of a model, to assess founders, but it's not quite working out. So it's really down to chemistry. As somebody said, we're working in a magic realm. But this is it exactly. That's exactly how it works. You don't know exactly how it works, but this is how it works. And if you find your time spent with Fender, it's times well spent, then it's great. So next question is for you, sir. So the team is the key. So from your experience of your fund, what are the key components of success? So that let's say your fund wants to invest in my idea. What are you going to look
Дякую
at?
за питання. Як чесно, ще цей час, поки сидів, слухав
Oh,
учасників,
thank you
трошки
very much for
зробив
this question. And I was
перегляд
sitting
попередніх
here
питань,
listening
пропонували
to other
таку
speakers,
коментар, що
and had some reflections there. And I just want to say that,
в 2, в 3, а то й в 4
I just feel that
для України.
there is 2 to 3 times more capital
Я би радив
that Ukraine can tap
продовжувати
into.
роботу і ставати
And there are
сильнішими.
companies in Ukraine that can actually tap into that capital. So companies need to do their homework. There's more capital than the current market can absorb. So that's regarding the previous question. Now, speaking of your second question, I think ideas are secondary. The first focus is on the team. Ideas are iterative. So the first priority is the team, and the second priority is the market. So number 1 is the team, number 2 is the market, and number 3 is the product. So the idea is that
щоб будувати продукт, який вирішує
достатньо велику проблему для create a product that can solve a problem that many people might have. So what kind of problem are you talking about? Like how big should it be? Are we talking Walmart levels? Well, thanks. That's a great question. I mean, venture investors are already considered, 1 billion companies easily, and I see a lot of founders count. Look at the market from top to bottom, and my suggestion is go the other way around. Go bottom up, right? Look at your ICP, and then start looking at the market. Do the calculations from bottom to top. So in other words, how many companies you can sell it to and for how much, right? Yeah, so that's a more fair assessment. Yes. Thank you, Andrii. You just teased. You found some alternative ways of funding, and investment doesn't necessarily have to be a key catalyst. So from your experience, when is the right time for a startup to say no to an investment, and what alternative ways of developing the products do they have? Well, first of all, you need to bring in investment if you know how you're going to grow and how you're going to bring in the second round of investment. So if there are some issues with either number 1 or number 2, then especially number 2, you'd be better served to postpone it. And unfortunately, this is exactly what we're seeing here in Ukraine. Now, regarding alternative ways, now our product was designed to be launched at the expense of funders' money, and then just a few words on grants. I mean, that's pretty obvious, at least, but it was one of the mistakes that we made. It took us a bit too long, right? So you should treat grants as a bonus. You know, that there's some area that you could potentially develop, provided there's a grant. But then also don't rely on it, don't count on it, because there are only so many good grants and many more companies. So, you have to start bringing in your users as your investors. So we changed our subscription model, right? So we thought, okay, we're going to increase the price, but we're going to give them all the updates, right? And the people will trust us and we'll use that money to invest in ourselves, and instead we'll get them something that nobody else can get them. Well, it worked out pretty well, especially surprising that people really prefer licenses to subscriptions. And that path really led to just people within the community starting spreading good feedback, and that's great, and one new user can bring in even more users, 2, 3, 15 users. So, and yeah, by the way, it's the recommendations that account for the majority of the growth we're experiencing. Another good sign we had two agreements, Finicky bought by and then Pixel Matter bought by Apple. So, and both compete with Adobe, and they try to present themselves as user first type of company, doing things radically differently from Adobe, or the way the Adobe does things. And that kind of turnaround allowed them to sell at a pretty good price. And for us in 10, it allows us to grow and to develop. We've got more money than we need, and we can keep investing in growth. And I mean, we're almost at the seed round, or comparatively speaking, and Ukrainian customers, just the number of them, that was quite a surprise. Second ranked country in terms of the number of subscribers. So, next year we will continue to focus on our customers. And yeah, so you like your business model? Yes, we do. It looks very robust, right, Evelina? So we started talking about good and bad grants. So Ukrainian Startup Fund, or as a Ukrainian Startup Fund, you also fund Ukrainian exhibitions at various expos, alongside with grant provision that you do. So can you please brief us what's available for potential clients, and what do you have to offer to potential startups? Well, absolutely. Just one key remark: we don't fund stands or exhibits. at expos. We help find people who can fund these types of exhibits, and we're also looking for the best possible startups to be presented at any of such expos, right? Just to have the biggest impact. And again, this kind of brings me back to this idea of alternative sources of funding. And I mean, we even had a situation where a winning team, winning entrepreneur, they said no to grant, even though they successfully completed the entire exercise pretty much, and they sent us a letter and they said, okay, let's just keep it as it is, leave it for somebody who might need it more than we do. And thanks for the experience. So anyway, what we're trying to do is to try and match Ukrainian startups with corporations. We have a separate program within our structure dedicated just to that, and we've conducted several iterations already so far. So startups can pitch their idea, they can pilot their idea using companies or corporations facilities and capacity. We had people going to headquarters levels office in Barcelona, to do their embedded sort of internship there. So there's a way for them to validate themselves, to make a pivot and get some feedback. So that's one of the things that we do. Now, as far as getting the best startups to put in these delegations, that's another major track of activities for us. So several dozens delegations, hundreds of Ukrainian, 400 in fact, upwards of 400 of Ukrainian startups getting access to UK and the US markets through exhibits, stands, or tech tickets, using sort of a mixed approach. And results speak for themselves. Performance is the key for us, and if startups do participate, they have to do it for a reason. They have to bring something back. They have to bring something home. Increased number of clients, more investments, new contracts. And we've done some analytics recently under guidance by the head of the patronage of the fund, Mr. Tihipko. So we looked at the startups that we brought along to all those different conferences, and they managed to secure hundreds of millions worth of investments since. So that just means that we're making a difference. And again, this is not just expos. We do events as well. We do site visits. We take startups to places like Silicon Valley. We organize meetings with the companies. We take them to universities and colleges. We do those closed meetings just to double that impact. And then we had multiple success stories of startups really breaking through because of that. And that one of our startup list brain, it got to in top 10 based on the quality of their on-stage pitch. So we are working holistically with these startups. We're not just giving them a spot and tell them, okay, go and present. No, we help them analyze, we help them get better results, and we help Ukraine startups look and sound more credible internationally. Thank you. So, Lena started talking about this student-oriented program. Ivan, you represent a different category of founders. So you've had a career first, and then you decided to launch your own product. Now, from my own experience, I know there is a steep learning curve, especially if you have that previous experience of having another career. I'm sure you faced that problem. So how do you use your resources properly at an MVP stage? Because as Leonid and others mentioned, you have to be ready for a marathon, for a long run, and you have to spend your resources wisely. Well, yes, thank you. I've spent years working at sea level, and I felt like I could make any startup a reality. And turn out that building something from 1 to 10 on that scale is much harder than from 0 to 1 on that same scale. If you have a large company, you can do UX testing, you can do client interviews, and then you just don't have any of that when you're doing your own startup. And even if you're a top manager, you're at best a so-so designer and at best an average marketing specialist. So you're lacking all these different skills. And I think in that case, in similar situations, a lot of these founders make that same mistake, or at least, this is what they tend to think. All right, let me innovate. Let me do something extremely disruptive. And this is what they try to do when they fail. But then if you look at really successful startups that manage to, founded by Ukrainians like our speech or AI SDR, Creation, Headway, all these ideas are not unique. You are not one off. They all entered an existing market. Our advantage as Ukrainian founders is the execution. We know how to execute properly. That's our superpower. This is what we need to focus on. So back to MVP question. Now, what helps me with my own startup and what I keep advising to other founders is get inspired as an artist. Steal like an artist would steal, in a good sense of the word. Just get inspired by others. Most of these problems that could ever have been broached, they all have been solved pretty much. Right. And then go and look at what market leaders are doing. And I mean, they've got millions that they can throw at these problems the minute you don't have. Or like that example with Adobe that we just heard, how their market share got squeezed. Yeah, exactly. So don't waste any money. Creating an MVP that you will end up redoing. Stop having to do all those pivots. So look at the best cases and adopt things, and this will help you save your resources. And back, to this superpower of ours, the execution. So if you manage to execute something better than other founders who might have had a head start, but they don't execute just as well, then you're going to have a competitive edge. Okay, thank you. One more question. Adam, the biggest mistake you've seen startups? I would just like to go back to some of these other ideas. So I think conferences are not very effective in terms of fundraising. It just doesn't work. So I recommend against this. So yes, don't be afraid of new ideas. Look at what other companies are doing, and having execution as your second mover is not the most reliable course of action. Now, what about you? What's the biggest mistake you see people make? Well, startup founders don't talk to their clients, unfortunately, or don't do that enough. And I've seen cases where somebody, who have worked in outsource or at a product company, somebody who's a good engineer perhaps, and they keep building, working on their product without ever talking to their clients, and then they end up producing something that nobody wants. Evelina, what is the biggest mistake you're seeing? Well, unrealistic expectations that the team set for themselves, and this is something that has to be managed. Andrii, if a startup works with B2C or B2C or a small business, just make sure you know what you're doing. Especially project this through your website. I've had the situation where you go to a website, you just can't figure out what they're doing, like what are they trying to sell. So make sure that you can show that. You have to be able to show what you're trying to do there. And then, use generative AI, Claude, for example, to, troubleshoot your messaging and see if it makes any sense. Right. When for us, we had communication with the client, that people kept buying, right? But only as long as they change some reviews on YouTube. And just by going to the website, they couldn't really figure it out whether they actually need it or not. So, one of the things you want to be very clear and very specific about. Leonid, what about you? Well, yes. Somebody came up with this rolling round format when founders start collecting a round of investments and takes them a year and a half, or even worse, while easing into the money they have. And then they come to an investor and they say, okay, it's a 1 million seed round. And if you look hard, you'll see that they have like 50,000 left in their accounts and are about to close shop. Well, Ivan, what about you? Well, I think it's the speed. Speed is the disadvantage. Somebody tries to come up with a product, with an idea through interviews with potential clients, right? And they just keep doing this for way too long. So you have to launch quickly, and you actually start looking for actual clients. And the faster you do it, the better. So validate the idea using live clients, be realistic, be clear about your product, use resources sufficiently, etc. Do we have time? Any more time? No, we do not. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you, Iryna. Thank you to all our panelists.